Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shay Imbidiata. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multi-facet impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. Justin Konikow is the co-founder and owner of Prime Real Estate Brokerage and Prime Media Productions. And let me tell you, he is bringing the perspective today. Founding with his wife, Shannon, the intent was to turn the industry upside down and come at things from a completely fresh viewpoint. Using his platform and networks for the brand, Prime quickly became one of the biggest household names in real estate with over 60 million in sales last year alone, with over 200 transactions, and being on $1 million listing with notorious New York realtor Ryan Serhant. More than just real estate and media production, Justin's viewpoints and approach to life is what caught my attention, and I'm so excited to bring you in on our conversation today. Trust me, this is not your typical real estate episode. Justin, I am so excited to have you on the Freedom CEO podcast today. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to just dive in to some solid conversation with you. You are in business, but you're in the real estate industry. You've got a marketing background. You're a podcaster. You're on TV. You've got all these different layers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really intrigued me about learning about who you are and how you show up in business and the real estate industry is how you're conducting yourself, which I think is very different. And I'm going to elaborate on that in a moment. But sure. You actually position yourself saying you came into the real estate industry to turn it upside down and coming at things from a completely fresh perspective. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear what you mean by that first.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to explain it is I didn't want to be an agent to begin with, right? So I came from a marketing and hospitality background. My wife from a small business background as well, too. And we watched our parents both build small businesses from the ground up, from nothing. And I always worked hard. And we were looking for something to do together. And my wife, fun fact, was actually licensed 7 years before me. Wow. And she kept mentioning real estate. And my exact response was, well, I don't want to be a greaseball on a golf course. Those guys don't work hard. And to be truthful, like my experience was I'd call an agent and they would set up a portal. I would find my own property. I would text them, hey, I like this one. They'd open the door. They knew nothing about the property and I'd write an offer and they get paid. And then I'd go to sell my house and it was the same process in reverse. I'd call 3 agents. They hear the comps, the market will set the price. And it didn't really do it for me. So when she kept mentioning real estate, my wife was actually the inception for Prime. And she's like, let's build something that's a professional company that does real estate, not necessarily say a brokerage model. So when I say we come at it from a different perspective, we're not really a brokerage like most people would think we are. Or more of a company that happens to specialize in real estate marketing and sales. So that was the catalyst. And as you know, in business, as you grow and you grow your team and your markets and different markets, things evolve and things change, right? So I think our little piece of the pie is very different from many others, but I think that's okay because what we enjoy doing, other people may not. And what other people enjoy doing, we probably wouldn't, right? So.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love that. And I love that it actually was your wife that had the idea to bring you into real estate. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And you are right. Obviously, you know, we've been in the industry for quite some time and there are many downsides to the reputation of a realtor. Many kind of taking on maybe that more stereotypical of almost like car salesman mentality, right? That has a negative stigma. And, you know, oftentimes when you come across even like really good realtors and you see what they're putting out on Instagram or on their social media platforms, it's a lot of just listed, just sold, use me. And you're one of the fewer people that I think show up and are constantly talking about, I was going to say self-improvement, but given I'm speaking to you, I don't even think that you would use that word as improvement, meaning if we're wanting to improve something, there's sometimes a negative connotation to that, that there must be something wrong or that we're needing to correct or change. And really, I see you that you would insert kind of saying this self-evolvement, meaning where I am right now is exactly where I'm meant to be. But in this pursuit of wanting to grow, learn, be better, meaning evolve. And so that's what really attracted me to you when I looked at what you're putting out and that value that's not just like real estate content and what the market is doing. And although that has a place and it's important, you really are this driver for self-evolvement. And I wanted to have you on to like unpack some of this. Like, where does this come from? Why is that important? And, you know, how is that making, I would assume that that's a differentiator for you amongst your clientele?
Well, it's pretty simple. I think when I think about when I started putting out content, I really wanted to bring the human aspect back to real estate, right? When I said I would kind of want to break down those barriers, I think both for consumers and other agents in our industry, I think a lot of times people put out this persona of perfection, whether it be the awards or the just listed, the just solds. And then you get two problems. One, the consumers resent us because there's this posture of them trying to be better than other people. And I think newer agents feel this sense of comparison that they get stuck in, and they feel bad about themselves because they think all these agents posting all these things and they have all these followers on Instagram, I can never be like that person. When in reality, I think the core of my content is trying to show people that they can, and that like, I'm probably more broken than more people, but here's the blueprint of some of the things that kind of helped me define who I am as an individual. Hopefully these tools can help you define yourself as an individual, and you can go find the best version of yourself using the tools. Because when I got in the industry, I couldn't find the mentorship in the industry. I couldn't find anybody that inspired me. So I started looking outside of our markets and outside of our industry. And I think at the core of it, like when I go back to my like early story, when I was in hospitality, I fell into addiction. I've been sober for over 10 years. Like that version of myself was probably the worst version of myself. That is my wall. That is what Sirhan talks about in terms of like who I'm running from, right? And that I'm not going to go back to being that version of myself. The other side of that coin is like, how does it translate into business? Because like the negative mindset or the negative self-talk, I've even gotten it where like, you know, I've heard by proximity people thinking, well, he puts out these videos, does it even help him sell business? And, you know, what's the purpose of it all? It's fascinating is like, I can hear that from the world and I can hear that from like the devil on my shoulder. But when I look at the facts, I'm putting up signs, I'm putting up sales, and I'm working with people that want to work with people that want to be excellent at what they do. So now if I take that concept of growth, not necessarily like, I don't want to be a life coach, I'm not Tony Robbins, but if I show you toolkits that help me change that version of myself into who I am today, what I found is like the builders, the developers, the commercial business owners, the investors, the people that I want to do business with, it's attracting people that are like me, that kind of do the same things in their world. And a lot of them have stories just like me. Now they're in positions of authority and they are worth millions of dollars and they're doing amazing things. And I want to work with really cool people who are authentically themselves, that are looking to improve every single day and live by the same core principles that I do. So the real hack is all of that content that I put out attracts my right fit client. I just make sure to trickle in the fact that I'm working towards being the most trusted name in real estate. I have the best market intelligence and deal flow in my area, but I'm not afraid to show the rinks and the bumps and the scars, because every single person watching this has wrinkles and bumps and scars that humanizes you and makes you authentically you. Does that make sense?
100%. And I love that phrase that it humanizes you. And I speak a lot about giving yourself permission to be human. because, and you talk a lot about the difference between perfection and striving for excellence instead of that. And I think a lot of people are very afraid to show these quote unquote imperfections, and they're really not. It's just like, wow, that's so human of you. You effed up, like you made a mistake, like you got it wrong, and it's all about in that moment, obviously, like how you pivot, how you excel forward, the lesson in that. But to be able to openly speak about that, not everybody can do that. They might be doing that in the background. And that is one thing that I love about you, is that you acknowledge this in the foreground and you're very open about that. I want to ask you, like, where does that come from for you? Because as much as you can say that's confidence and you're not afraid because, you see other people maybe doing that.
Sure.
That's a really easy answer, but it's still, for, I think, people listening, they can go, yeah, well, that's easy for him to do, but like, I can't do that. So like, where does that come from for you?
The core of it is I'm not living for this world, right? Like my faith is the core of everything that I do as well. And take away everything that I have today and I'll pick up garbage and I'll do whatever I have to do to make it work. Because ultimately we're all going to be in the ground and we're not going to take anything with us, right? And I'm living for God. And somebody told me one day, you're going to meet God and he's going to look at you, and hell would be him showing you who you could have been. Right.
Totally.
That's the real crux of it, is there's not a man, woman, or person on this planet that I'm beholden to. So at the end of the day, if I say what's on my mind, I tell you how I feel, and I truly live to be who I am. I'm not worried what other people are going to think of me, because the only person I'm genuinely competing with is myself, to prove to him who I could be.
Totally. Wow. Such a powerful response. Super encouraging. And maybe inspiration for some people that have not really gone down that journey. So you brought it up. I'm intrigued. Like, when did this start for you?
So it was like, I had faith early on. I fell off pretty hard when I was in my teens. I grew up in Montreal, which very exciting town, but I actually left because it was too fun. I was life of the party, friends everywhere, access to everything you could imagine. Came to London, Ontario. So we're located in southwestern Ontario, London being the heart of the market. And I got into hospitality, which is not the greatest place to be when you're trying to leave that kind of lifestyle. But I always worked hard. I always had a million jobs, and I was always kind of ingrained, but I felt like I was living for the world. And like, I've done some deep work with some interesting people talking about my childhood and growing up, and some things that made me led to try and impress, say, other people, or be the life of the party, or get access to all the things. But as I was going down that path, as I got more access, as I got more things, more popularity, and there was never anybody that was ever showing up and saying, well, now you got it, or patting you on the back and saying, well done. And I felt there was 2 or 3 times in my life where I went through phases and came to a crux in the road where I had to make a decision, go left or go right. And I kept choosing the right path and leading a life that I didn't want. But it was always these incremental changes. Entered the addiction part, and I landed in the hospital for 7 days. And I feel like God was like, yeah, like, this is it. Like, you go this way or go that way, and you need to make the decision. So what's interesting is, when I had that experience, I genuinely asked him, like, are you real? Right. I was going through this phase of my life. And like, I don't think many people ask that question. I'm not here to tell people what to think. I'm just telling you my story. And when I challenged him with that question, I definitely got an answer. And what's interesting is, once you get the veil pulled back on just asking yourself that simple question, are you living for the world and the acknowledgement of other people, or are you truly living for something bigger, whatever that means to you? When I asked that question, I started looking at it through the lens. Every decision I make started changing, right? In terms of where I was deploying my resources. And this would probably resonate with you. You've only got 3 things. You have time, skill, and money. In the beginning, we have lots of time, no skill, no money. So we use our time, do everything, running around, showing anything, just to learn the market. Then you got a little bit of skill and maybe a little bit less time. So then you apply that skill to work with like some clients. Then you make a whole lot of money, and then you start spending money to buy back your time and amplify your skill. And as I saw, like, I just kept asking myself, like, am I doing this for the world, or am I doing this for a bigger purpose? And as I started like reinvesting money into the bigger purpose, I saw it pay dividends. And really, when I look at deployment of time, skill, or resources now, I'm always thinking like short money or long money. Is this short money or is this long money? And that was the big unlock for me, was really just starting to weigh the decisions I make, whether it be my faith, my fitness, my family, my fun, or my finances, against, are those things moving me towards a better version of myself, or is doom scrolling TikTok making me a worse version of myself? Because I'm human, and like I can do that. But now I'm like, all right, well, I want to do that less and maybe pick up a book or stretch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I started
Totally.
weighing my decisions against that kind of meter.
So, okay. I love this. I love conversations like this. Had no idea that this was part of your journey and part of the DNA, that makes up you and your brand. So you said a couple things that, for maybe some people listening, you said you started asking certain questions and you got answers.
Yep.
That might be a little hard for some people, like palatable. Like, how did you get the answer? What was it that you were looking for that confirmed that you did have, this bigger purpose? And like, how did you come to that conclusion that you were hearing, I'm going to say, like, from God?
I think it's interesting how it works now, right? Because quite often, like, and again, if we're going deep into this conversation, when I'm weighing a decision, instead of me thinking that I'm in control, I start internalizing the decision and giving it away. Like, I think as people, think of a little kid, right? Think of a little baby. They're young. They can't even do anything on their own. So we do everything for them. And then the kid gets a little bit older, but the kid's world is very much centralized around themselves. Okay. They'll literally go into a room of 5 other kids, take the toy with no repercussions into the social engagement with those childs because they want the toy, right? But we're all little kids that just grew up. And I think when I was in that phase of my life previously, where I thought I was in control of every decision and I was the hero of the movie, when I asked God about that switch of being like, hey, like, show me you're real, I kind of just let go of the wheel. And I laugh because there's that song, Jesus Take the Wheel, right? But like, I literally was just like, hey, whatever happens, happens. Like, I had hit rock bottom at that point. I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to shut up for as much as I talk, and I talk a lot. I'm just going to listen. And like, before I make decisions, or if I feel emotional about something that happened with a client, a team member, somebody out there, instead of me trying to bull rush through this with all of my energy, I'm going to give it to you. And I'm going to ask you to just give me some clarity on that pathway. That was the answer. And I started seeing it in very unlikely ways. Right. Yeah. And I have, like, some of my closest friends are atheists. I'm friends with people, all shapes, sizes, colors, beliefs, religions, whatever. And I've had very in-depth conversations about them in terms of what they quantify as a factual experience, because I can tell you decisions that I've weighed and things that have happened and people that have shown up in my life to open up doors that I fought against closing, that closed and ended up being massive opportunities, would have never happened had I not just sat back and kind of just given up that control and been receptive to the feedback. Right. And it sounds very ephemeral and it's unquantifiable. And a lot of people want something like tangible, like, hey, did you get an email from him that said do this?
Yeah.
But if you're open to it, you'll get the emails. They just come in forms of people's and opportunities. Right.
Yeah. I've often described communicating with God. I oftentimes will refer to him as the big G upstairs, so that prayer is me coming to God and talking to him, and meditation is the listening side, is when I receive and wait for him to talk. And I think in today's world, a lot of us, even if we don't practice it, understand the principles and the fundamentals of what meditation is, instilling your mind, going inward, maybe waiting for a download or a vision or an idea. And so that's how I practice it, is that's really what I use my meditation for. Sometimes it's literally to still my mind, but as I'm going in and asking questions or asking for a sign or an answer, in my prayer time, then the opposite of that is through meditation, where I'm waiting, I'm listening, I'm like, I'm here, I'm available, I'm ready. Do you?
Well, sometimes no answer is the answer, right? Like, hearing you say that, I'm like, and it's like, again, it's a fun conversation because, like, you can get into routine. And then like the mindfulness, the prayer becomes a routine, and you're like, I gotta snap myself out of that and like always be fluid, right? So yeah, it's interesting to hear you explain that.
Yeah. Do you use meditation at all in your kind of
I call it prayer, right? People call it whatever they want. Like I do have every single day, like every successful person that I've seen, it's called Freedom CEO. So this probably is the audience for this, has a successful morning routine. The ultra successful have a successful nighttime routine. I'm batting probably 95% on my morning routine. I'm like 45% on my nighttime routine, 35 if I'm being honest.
Which is great.
But that morning routine, working towards it. But the morning routine is key, right? So the very first thing I do, hardest thing is not to touch your phone, because in our world, our phones equals money, right? But like no Instagram, no social media, nothing, no emails, no checklists, nothing for an hour when I wake up. It's typically mindfulness first, and then I move, and then I open up my stuff.
So let me ask you, because you are spot on, obviously, it can be very difficult. I have a no phone. Obviously, we even, not just realtors, but I think a lot of people in general, like have the phone right beside their pillow on their nightstand. And I'm all about like EMF and radiation and like transmitting back and forth, never mind just being in the environments where we all are, whether you're in London, Ontario, or you're in Toronto. We have so many towers and all of this stuff transmitting. So as much as possible, like not to have it right here by your head. And to take it a step further, and this probably, you know, like at one point while I was trying to master my routine of not hitting the snooze button, was like, okay, well, to break that, the easiest way is to not have your phone beside your bed, and you have it in the kitchen, because or wherever you are, you know, you have it in a different room. So when it goes off and it's so annoying,
gotta get up.
There's no ability to do that. You've got to get up. And then when you're up, like, that's it, you know, you go forward on your day. So do you do something similar like that to help, you know, to honor that hour of mindfulness for you to be able to get into your routine?
Well, similar to getting into real estate in this instance, it's forced compliance by my wife. So she's very much like you. She doesn't want any devices near our beds. So it's actually in another room entirely. I've found myself, so I went through recovery, I had a major surgery on my hip, and I found myself hitting the snooze button. The solution that I found for that is the same one that I found when I was trying to learn to swim again. Cause like for recovery, swimming's fantastic. I, like tried to free swim, and I could barely breathe. I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, I used to swim in CJAP, and like, I used to be able to swim. So on a YouTube, figured it out, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is how you breathe, whatever. For the snooze, I actually did the same thing. So like, I'm a big YouTuber. I go on YouTube and I'm like, how to not wake up with an alarm, or how to wake up and not hit the snooze button. And Jocko Willink stuff came up. And in my head now, every morning I listen to so many of his podcasts. I watched a whole bunch of stuff about that morning routine. And he's like, just get up. They're like, what's the answer? They're like, no, he's like, just get up. He's like, just make a decision, just get up. And it's funny because I listened to so much of it that now when it goes up, I hear his voice in my head just saying like, just get up. And you have all these micro battles in the day. So getting it out of my room was key. I would encourage people to look at Ben Greenfield. He has a great book called Boundless, and then another one called Boundless Parenting. Talks a lot about EMF frequencies and like that dynamic. Getting it out of the room gets me to get up. And then once I'm up, the investment I've made in the energy of like walking over to my phone and turning off the alarm, I'm already up. And then I think preparation is key, right? So the night before, I typically have my workout clothes folded right next to my phone. So then I look at them, I grab them, and I change. I've heard people that like sleep in their workout clothes. So they just get up and then they just go down and train. So I think a lot of it has to do with anticipating the things that will stop you from making the decision you don't want to make, and preparing yourself to make the decisions you want to make.
Totally. Yeah. Which is very true. And I mean, a lot of kind of what we're talking about is these boundaries that we set for ourselves and how we want to create a life, like I call it, like creating a life by design, right? Like how you want to show up in the world and how you want to enjoy your own time. And as an agent, and I mean, a lot of people in business, but as realtors, there's this unwritten, but very well spoken that we're always on, we're always needing to be accessible. And this is the play where like boundaries really come into effect, and learning, you know, your clients actually appreciate when you put these boundaries on yourself.
Sure.
Because they do that. A lot of, you know, top CEOs and executives, they are not yes people. They say more no's than they do yeses. And it's not common that they get no's. Like, they're usually the ones giving orders and people are following. But when they get to work with somebody who actually respects their own time as they respect it, there's something really amazing that, and as an exchange, that ends up happening. And so I want to ask you this, and I was like, I don't know where our conversation is going to go on this.
Sure.
You recently, I think, put out a post on Instagram or some quote saying that your response is your reputation.
Yeah.
And the speed at which you respond to people is a direct reflection of how it will be to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance that for yourself, or maybe just dive deeper into some context? Because like when I read that, I'm like even before today coming on, I have a client who has responded back to me about something to go do a first step at his house on Thursday.
Sure.
And I'm busy. I'm not giving him my time right now. And I saw your thing and I was like, wow, I wonder if Justin would disagree with me right now.
No.
I was like, you know, and if that's going to be a reflection of, I mean, I've worked with him for 10 years. So on and on, like back and forth. But
so let me jump in and kind of address that. So like your relationship with this person, do they have an idea of how you operate?
Yes. Yeah.
Do they trust you?
Yes, they do.
Do they know you're going to get back to them?
100%. Yeah.
There. So that's a big thing, right? When I say, so that was actually, I believe I gave credit to Seth Godin. I think it was in his blog that I read that initially. And a lot of times when I do my Twitter threads, there's streams of consciousness, which then I turn into short form content. So a lot of the videos I make, fun fact, they're tweets that I made that I go back to. So like Twitter's a really good way for an idea bank for you to create videos. That idea is, you can look at it like 9 different ways. So if it's somebody that's never met me before, 100%, like my reaction time to that lead, like, you know, in this business is going to be very, very high percentage chance I convert them if I get back to them immediately. Like, because they probably message 10 agents. And if I'm the first person to get them on the phone, not just a text, but I actually talk to them, higher chance of converting. The next step is like delivering, over-indexing on value, and giving them ideas of where's the market at, what stuff about that area they don't know. If they're buying along Lake Huron, like I specialize in Grand Bend, you know, water levels are going to rise in the next 4 years. So if Shay comes and buys a $4 million waterfront property that's underwater in 7 years and she didn't know about it, she's going to be upset. I'm going to save her from that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm showing you what it's like to work with me by the way that I respond. Now, if I'm busy and maybe I'm overwhelmed with the amount of inquiries, well, that should be an indication for me to create a system to respond to those leads and say, hey, got your inquiry, I'll get right back to you. Often that's enough for people to understand that, hey, I'm going to get back to you. And then the way to earn the business is deliver on that. Actually call them back, because how many agents just don't call people back, right? That's how you and I probably build our business.
Yeah.
Now let's go to like clients that really get us, right? He talked about protecting your time. And the guy that built this building, I do a ton of business with him. We rep his new build sites, fantastic, loyal, the type of clients I want to work with. Like I will die on my sword for that guy. I'll do things for him that I wouldn't do for just anybody, because we've built the relationship. You know, we were bouncing back and forth. He has a site. We were kind of giving him some insight on it. And we wanted to do an in-person meeting. We built out this incredible document. Here's the entire strategy, start to finish, how you're going to net out from the project. But we kept missing each other. I had some family stuff going on too. And like, I over communicated in terms of like, hey, I'm here on this date. And say he's the same thing. He respects his time. I respect mine. But there's also an unspoken trust and truth there that I'm not putting him on the back burner. And I also know he's not doing the same to me. That doesn't necessarily need to be said. So I would say for your client, the biggest problem with my content is the people that don't know me don't understand where my heart is at and the intent. It's not to make you feel like, oh, you're not responding fast enough, Shay, or other people that read my stuff that are like, I think Justin's talking about me. Most of my content, I'm talking about myself. Right. It sounds like I'm talking to every agent because it's very similar problems we all face, But quite often the things that I'm talking about are the version of myself I don't want to be, things in the industry that I don't think should be in the industry and we need to get rid of. And if it sparks a conversation, let me ask you a question. Does that make you want to create a system to make sure the response rate is there, or does that make you upset? Because I feel like you're the type of person who's a builder who gets inspired by challenges and doesn't just shy away from them.
Yeah, so I love the question. It didn't. So I'm going to say like almost like neither. Like I am very, well, I guess that's not true. I'm all about systems and automation and duplication and also eliminating things that we've either been doing and we keep doing just because we've always done them. And it's like, but does it serve a purpose? Is it efficient? Does it work? Is there an ROI? What's the KPI? Like all of, right, getting rid of that. So I'm automate, delegate, eliminate. Those are like my three that I constantly am asking. So on any system, whether it's a lead that comes in through creating a brochure, like I go through those three things: automate, delegate, eliminate. And so, yes, I knew more so like when I was reading it, that it wasn't obviously directed towards me.
Sure.
And I think for anybody out there, as much as like we love you, most of content is not pointed at anybody, right? And it's funny how people can think it's about them. And if you do think it's about them, that's something for you to go take up with your own self and go dive in as to why is Justin's post triggering me right now? Because Justin's not creating it to trigger you. Like you just said, you're creating this a lot of the times for yourself and your own reflection of how you want to evolve better, or like what you want to work on, which leads to the same thing. But it made me curious. I was like, I want to know about like your boundaries, because I love saying no. It's my favorite word. Like, and I hear agents all the time, right? Who they'll be up in Muskoka, 3 hours north of Toronto, and somebody wants to go do a showing on a Sunday, and they get a message at 4 p.m. on a Saturday, and they're up north with their family or friends or by themselves. And all of a sudden they're leaving to go do that showing because they're afraid of saying no. And, and that's a whole other conversation and an episode on its own, really, around mastering that and why. So yeah, like when I read it, I was like, okay, he's got to have something in place, because you obviously can't respond to absolutely everything like in an instant. So I was curious. Boundaries, systems, that's where my brain went.
Yeah. So that tweet specifically actually triggered something for me to look at in terms of how we're communicating updates to clients, right? Because like I use it as like, well, if I'm saying this, who am I actually? Right. And I think about individual clients, buyers, sellers, investors. And then I think of larger mandates where, there's an entire organization working on a project and they need an update. And I've been working on my team with some new updates for those clients. Same thing. Like we've always done things the way we've done them, but we're not afraid to scrap things, try new things, and bolt on different systems. When it comes to like my daily boundaries, I think reasonable work hours make sense for most people, right? Responding within a time frame. Like normally in the morning, I'm in meetings. Like I have stuff scheduled every morning that my clients know I need to do, which includes my team meetings, my prospecting time, and working on the business and systems, which affects every single one of my clients.
Totally.
So when they message me, like if I'm in a meeting, I'm in a meeting, right? And I have a standard text, or I've built a rapport with them that they understand if it's urgent, they tell me. Even my team members. So like my team members will call me, and maybe they'll call me twice, and I'll say, I'm not available, text me if urgent. And I would say 95% of the time, it's not urgent. To them, it's urgent.
Sure.
But like in our world, the problems I've seen and solved, I'm like, oh, that's like a 2 out of 10. Here's the solution. If you still need to talk, I'll call you after. Right. Like, technology is built enough that I find, as long as you're not putting pressure on yourself of what are they going to think of me if I don't respond to them in an hour, are they going to quit? Like, I'm not attached to that. Like every agent here could quit tomorrow and I'll be just fine. Like my ego won't. Maybe my ego will take a bit of a beating from like just the influx of that too. But ultimately, like I'm not living for this. I'm living for a purpose, right? So I think at the core of it, I know my core values. The systems, they're not 100% refined. I'm always refining them. I think from a workflow perspective, Ryan taught me this as well. And Ryan's been my mentor since 2018. Cool. And we talked about like daily routines. And I
Right.
impart those values to my team, that your prospecting time and your business time is in the morning.
Yeah.
Typically, you don't take appointments in the morning, because if you're just running around from the start of the day, you get nothing done.
Totally.
Appointment times in the afternoon or in the evening, if it's dollar productive or necessary. And I have certain clients that we got to get in my house.
Yeah.
I took clients last Thursday I showed them 8 properties, which is 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Right. People in my position, like normally people are like, well, you're actually showing properties, Justin? I'm like, yeah, like my people need a house, and the trickle effect of like getting that done for them is going to generate a boatload more business. Plus that's my job. So yeah, 100% I'll open doors and do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, other times if I get a call on something and the client's not qualified to the point where, like, if I show you this, are you prepared to make an offer? And they just want to look at houses. I don't do that anymore, because I have enough skill and money that the deployment of time makes no sense for that person either. Like now I'm in a position where I realize, to me, to serve that person, there's no point in me opening up doors and wasting 3 hours of your day if you're not in a position that you're actually going to pull the trigger on that property, because I'm going to show you something you fall in love with. And then in 3 months, you may not even be able to buy that thing anymore. Right. But I think that just comes with time and experience and goal setting, reflecting on the transactions you've done, looking at the ones. Like, I would encourage any agent, write down every transaction you did last year, rank them 1 out of 10. 7's not an option, because that's just a gimme. And take all your 8s and go find more 8s. Take all your 6s and belows, and you'll probably keep your like 5s and 6s. Anything that's below 4, just say no to it next year, and you'll naturally go find more 8s to 10s.
Totally. I love that. And I think a lot of even what you've just been sharing is very transferable if you're in the service industry in general, right? Like if you're listening right now and you're like, well, I'm not a realtor. Like you don't need to be a realtor. Like if you are a coach and you deal with people on a day-to-day business, this philosophy, these, advice, the suggestion is transferable across different industries on how to, and a lot of it is around leveraging. It's like understanding how to leverage your time, but also understanding that you don't need to say yes to everything. And you can get some really bad clients. You can get some really bad files that they take up so much of your time and they don't go anywhere. And if you're too afraid to cut them out and say no, even if they have all the money in the world, even too, like I don't know if you've experienced this, and I'd love to hear kind of even your thoughts. There's sometimes people that come in, they're qualified, they're a strong buyer, and strong could mean, anything million plus, 3 million plus, 5 million plus. And you know what you're going to get on the other side of that if you were to sell them that house. But sometimes it's not an energetic fit. Personalities don't work. And it serves the client better to say, I'm not the right person for you. Whether maybe somebody else in your team or my team could service, that could be an option. And if not, it's like there's so many people, there's so many agents out there, right? Where you're going to end up spending so much time with that person and it might not go somewhere, or the experience isn't good, even if it does go somewhere. And then guess what? That's all that client talks about, is how horrible it was to spend time with Shay or to spend time with Justin on that transaction, because you're not focused on the service, you're focused on that dollar. And then you're afraid to say no to that. Like, have you experienced that, encountered that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I could speak to a pretty broad audience as well, too, because we own a production company. So in the media space, when we're working with people, it's the exact same thing. Marketing, sales, branding, all these principles still apply, whether you're a custom sneaker maker, coffee shop, whatever. And I'll tell you this. So a couple stories in our industry. There've been 2 large build sites that I cut ties with, and I released them. So in those situations, they were not an ethical fit. They were not a culture fit. And I was willing to draw a line in the sand and saying, yep, I'll give up over 100 unit sales, average price point of 900 plus, 850 on the other one. And that was 103 houses. So 278 houses total, just because it was toxic for the culture of my company.
Right.
And I was listening to Peter Attia's book on the way here today, and they were talking about cancer. Oh, no, actually, I was listening to The Culture Solution. That's what I was listening to. And they were talking about cancer cells in a body. And they said, cancer starts with one cell. Yeah. And if that cell started to infect your body and you were aware of it, how quickly would you cut that cancer out of you immediately.
Right.
Yet when it comes to business, whether it's a buyer, seller, team member, staff member, when a cancer cell invades your ecosystem, it's fascinating how we'll be willing to just let it percolate and what that does to the overall culture and how it could put you back steps, but can also help you formulate who you actually are. And I think I've always looked at it as an opportunity. There's no negatives. There's been great times where like I've found the right builders by going through and working with the wrong ones. You know, I found my wife because I know what else is out there, and she's the most amazing woman on the face of the earth, right? And I think it's the lens at which you look at things through, where it's exactly with what you said. Like there's a recent file over $10 million that I wasn't a good fit for because I wouldn't do it for the tiny fee they were willing to pay for the amount of work that would be involved with that. They wouldn't listen to my pricing strategy. There's a lot of things wrong with it. And instantly in this industry, because it's this comparison game, I think we can get into a position where we think we are defined by the listings that we get or the solds that we get. And when in reality, I don't think a person noticed that all of a sudden I released those building sites. I don't think a person noticed that I'm not doing that building because it doesn't ultimately really matter to anybody but myself or the other people that I was working with, right? And I think saying no makes you realize who you really, really want to say yes to, and gives you more. It gives you a weight and a freedom that I can tell you, if you take on the wrong clients, it will drag you down. It'll be an energy vampire, but it's tricky to go through that process. And like I said earlier, when I gave it up to God and I said, you know, I'm just going to let it be what it be. Sometimes those doors closing, I couldn't see 5 or 6 years ago that those same doors that closed and the clients that I said no to ended up being opportunities today, where I'm getting opportunities because I said no to misalignments. Yeah. And there's one specific file I can think of where I have an opportunity bigger than anything I've ever had in my career because I said no to somebody and they saw me say no to that person who they're not in alignment with. And they're like, you're our people. Wow. So yeah, don't be afraid to say no. That's for sure.
And like, even too, as I'm hearing you share this story, I can't even imagine how much happier you are. Like the process, because it's not just about the destination, right? You need to enjoy the journey to get there and that process. And each client you take on is a different journey, right? Like we have an end goal, we have a destination that's why we've been hired to work with them. But to not enjoy that process, like we're in the people business, we're in a relationship business. So if you're saying yes to something that doesn't align with you, that entire journey is not enjoyable. And it comes back down to this, like, life is too short to be doing things that we really just don't enjoy doing. And like you said, because you said no to something that doesn't resonate with you, that wasn't in alignment, that doesn't fit your brand, doesn't fit your core values, isn't in line with what you agreed with the big G upstairs that you said you were going to do, it translates into something so much more beautiful that you didn't even imagine was going to happen, you know? And that's part of like even the law of attraction, you know, of whatever you're going to focus on grows, and what you focus on, you attract. And so I love hearing stories like this, you know, it's so good. It's really great. Justin, I want to ask you, you've talked about it a couple times. We've talked about purpose. What is next for you right now? Like, what is the vision for Prime? What are you building? What are you doing?
Truly to be the most trusted name in real estate, right? So it's easy to say that, and it's easy to say in a bio that, you know, we're flipping the industry on its head and every agent's got something unique. But I mean, truthfully, refining ourselves, and I'm very countercultural. So when I saw, you know, the growth in our industry in the bull market, I kind of wanted to get leaner in terms of our core team, the foundation of Prime. Like what we're doing now, and we've always done this, is, you know, 3 steps forward, 1 step back, and slowing down to go faster. Meaning all of our systems. So we're working through the administrative systems, the transaction coordination systems, the marketing systems, the media company, the Prime universe, like the ecosystem of all the different people in it, and like at what layer of the Prime universe are they engaged. I think listening is a big part of it. So we've started implementing quarterly reviews where we do the yearly goal setting. But I found yearly goal settings useless because they do it once and then they never look at it again until the next year when it's time for contract review. And I'm like quarterly checking in, and we're auditing all of our systems, 1 out of 10, 7's not an option, and then really starting to formulate what we are and who we're for. And I think doubling down on that piece. And I think when it comes to just Prime as a company, I think the marketing division and what we're doing on the media side, it excites me. I'm a cinematographer by nature. I shoot, I edit, I always have. Cool. And I want to bring more of that into what I'm doing. So we're looking to do some things in the media space that's very different from your standard listing videos and what that looks like. And yeah, just really excited. We have a really good squad of people, very talented, some big ambitions on this squad. So we just want to give them a platform where they can build their rocket ships. And yeah, I think you'll see a bunch of us doing some fun things everywhere.
I love that. Well, I always say there's never a dull day in real estate. So I'm sure you guys will be proving that and taking it up a notch with whatever you're creating. So I look forward to seeing that. I want to just kind of shift in the remaining time you and I have together, kind of looking at the market. We're in a really bizarro time in the world, right? With everything. It doesn't matter what topic you want to choose today. It's weird and it's whacked. And it's hard. And so when I think of rates just went up again, inflation keeps rising. And really, what does the future of real estate look like? And for new home buyers, even current home owners, just because you own a home right now doesn't mean that you're in a position that you're going to be able to buy up or even buy again, right? And so it's a very uncertain time for a lot of people. What's kind of your take right now that you're offering to your clients, like buyers and sellers, about should you get into the market now? Nobody has a crystal ball. We can't say where the market's going to go. But, I have a lot of people that are like investors and aspiring entrepreneurs and aspiring investors that tune in here.
Yeah.
And, you work with a lot of obviously homeowners and buyers and also investors. So give me your take.
Yeah, we work with a ton of investors. And we're in the commercial space as well too. So I started in commercial. That's a random fact about Prime. So I have a pretty good snapshot of what's happening in all three of those. This would be my advice. Pay attention to the macro, but make your decisions in the micro, right? There's a lot of conversations happening from a global perspective, and people love to talk about emerging markets. But I think at the crux of it, we think about Canada as a market. I'm not selling Canada. This is just a fact.
Yeah.
We have a stable economy compared to the rest of the world. We have rule of law compared to the rest of the world. We have more fresh water than almost anywhere on the planet. And all of those three things are going to mean that we're going to be a place that people want to live for a very long time. I think immigration has proven that. I think our fiscal policy and our leadership leaves a little bit to be desired. And I think what they're doing with the interest rates isn't going to solve the problem. I think we're going to be in a housing crunch and a supply issue, because I bet you know this as well in the space you're in. A lot of developers have shelved projects. They're building specs because nobody wants to build new right now. And everybody's tightened their belt, and we're in a place where people are used to the interest rate changes and, the market's changed. But from a micro perspective, I'm very data driven. So when I do my market updates, and this is a complete shift from our conversation, everything we talked about lives on my page. When you go to Prime Real Estate's YouTube channel or our newsletters, Prime is 100% focused on educating the consumers. Here's the actual facts. I don't care what you do. I'm going to buy or sell in up or down markets, but here's the actual average price points, the numbers of properties that are trading, the month of inventory, what's happening in the different markets. You make your own decisions. Right. I think for consumers, I would say make sure that you get your financial house in order. Start looking at what does it look like for you to live with higher interest rates. I'm seeing people downsizing from larger properties to put cash in the bank to just batten down the hatches. But I also see other people looking at opportune buys where now you can get stuff at a discount, where you and I, the life we lived 2 years ago, people were paying astronomical prices saying there's no way this can last. Well, it didn't last. And if you think that the down market's going to last forever, you're also incorrect. So I'm seeing people find success that are paying attention to their financial house. They have an idea of what they can and can't do, but they're also not afraid to make decisions.
Totally. On the other side of that coin, and I don't know if you share the same kind of thought or opinion, but you have a lot of people that are sitting on the sidelines right now because of interest rates rising and inflation kind of going hand in hand. But the moment that there is even a slight adjustment in rates to come down, you're going to see, I believe, this influx of buyers in the market that now is going to result in what you alluded to just even a couple of years ago of competing for limited supply that we have. And that's just going to drive up prices. So, the things I kind of share with clients right now, I'd love for your opinion on it. This is, you might be paying more on your mortgage payment and on the premium right now, but you're better to lock in and have an asset at a price today versus maybe getting a lower interest rate in a year from now, a year and a half. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 years from now, but you're going to pay more for the actual asset when you could have locked in that price and then refinance in a couple of years from now, if we have the opportunity to do that. But I think you're going to see like prices just skyrocket if they were to do something like that.
So there was an interesting phenomenon that happened when the CMHC came out with the equity program saying, hey, we're going to help you buy a house and we're going to own a piece of it.
Right.
And then I watched the government start cranking rates and make it unaffordable for people to buy houses. I start seeing them dropping prices down. I'm like, what if all of a sudden corporate bodies and government starts buying houses and companies like Amazon and Tesla come in and start buying hundreds of acres and building properties and renting them back to their employees?
Right.
That's actually happening. So like
that is happening.
Yeah, Glenda Baker's a good friend of mine. She's in Atlanta, and it is a problem in Atlanta. And if people don't think that that's possible, there's nothing I can do for you. Like if you look at the rental market and you look at what's happening logically, the more properties that are owned by corporations, government bodies, and rented back to the public, the less chance that you have to actually own property in a home. So like I said, I don't care what you do. The only person I'm competing with is me, and I'm giving you the advice that I would give to my own family members. And what I'm doing is I'm happy to buy land 100% down, no financed on it, not because I've Elon Musk or I have all the money to spend, but because I truly think it's a good investment and it's a resource that there is limited supply in. And I think the supply issue is something that's going to come down the road. And like there's a problem we're trying to solve for right now where the market has adjusted. We don't know where rates are going to be in 6 months. So if I want to build new, how do I build new, get that house appraised and finance my clients knowing they're not going to typically appraise the house till it closes? Like these are the problems we're trying to solve for. But I also think if I extrapolate that 5 years, I think building new is going to be a luxury. I think most people won't be able to afford it. So that house that may be a little bit more expensive for you to purchase now, what if I told you in 5 to 10 years it was going to double in price? Would you yield, a little bit higher of a mortgage rate and stop spending $1,000 a month on Starbucks and just put it into a property investment? Would you do that 100%. If I could add $500,000 to your balance sheet? These are the conversations people need to be thinking about, not necessarily just reacting to the media and the headlines.
Totally. And in addition to that, and this is just like a chime thought because we don't have too much time to go into it, is even then the effect and the weight of currency as it's getting devalued every day, because that also has an effect on your purchasing ability. So it's like in a year from now, I mean, the US is going to be rolling out in July their whole central banking digital currency. And that's going to have a whole other effect that nobody's talking about right now is currency and fiat. So yeah, I love your perspective. I'm so grateful to have you on. You're on the Freedom CEO podcast for a few different reasons, as I'm sure everybody has realized through our conversation today. Before I let you go, Justin, I need to ask you one last question. When you think of being the CEO of your life, not your business, of your life, how has taking ownership over your decisions brought you freedom?
It's funny. You talk about my Twitter threads. The one I'm in the process of writing right now is about personal accountability. And I think we're really scared to tell the world who we are because we think we're defined by our actions. And I think we're actually refined by them. So rarely will you meet somebody out there that hasn't been through the same thing that you have. And I think if you can take control and take accountability for the decisions that you're making and get a squad of people around you that are going to cheer for you, even if it's things that you screw up, clients as well. If you can take ownership of those decisions and communicate effectively with people around you, you're going to find a better version of yourself than you ever thought possible.
I love it. Love it. Well, if you are not following Justin, he's in the show notes. If you've been watching, obviously you've seen the handle come up on the screen. Make sure to connect with him, especially if you're in the London area. You know, he is a great agent and you will be in very good and trusted hands. And I know he's available in his DM, so feel free to connect with him that way as well. Justin, thank you for coming on. And I'm going to have you back at some point. We'll catch up in like 6 months from now or something. See how Prime has grown and what you're up to.
For sure. And I'll get you on the Prime People podcast as well, Shay. Thanks for having me.
I would love it. Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, hop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories. Remember to tag Shane Vidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.